Welcome to Redde-Zone Radio Podcast. I'm Rick Saylor, and today's interview is with John Kirsch, owner of Kirsch CPAs, a full-service CPA firm. This episode's brought to you by our sponsor book, Exit Smart, where 10 industry leaders shared their key insights on how companies are built to sell best and at the highest value. John, welcome to the show.
Rick, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me on, and I'm looking forward to a fun session here where we can pass along some great information to your viewers and listeners.
Yes, absolutely. So I know you and I have talked over the years. We've known each other, and we got started really in a way because you were looking for a wealth management firm that you could send some of your clients to, and you graciously sent those. We appreciate those, and we were able to help those people. And then, you know, when it came upon my succession plan and with the wealth management firm, and now I'm managing general partner of that, but spend most of my time now with other business owners and trying to consult with them. And you did our pro forma in terms of that worksheet that tells us what values we plugged in the numbers and looked at what our projections are and all that intricate planning.
Well, it was a pleasure to be able to make some referrals to another service provider that you trust and you know is going to take care of your people. As we both know, and as I'm sure our listeners know, when you make a referral, that is always a little risk involved, right? Because you're putting your name on the line. Absolutely. And so it's always nice to know that the people that you make a referral to are going to take care of your clients just like you take care of them. And on that certainly is the case with your organization.
Thank you.
And it was really an honor and a privilege to be part of that exercise. It's part of what we do as an organization of assisting businesses throughout their life cycle. Of course, every business is going to have a succession. It's just a matter of when and how. So that's how you and I really got into more of an in-depth discussion about your work with exit planning and the support that our organization provides in that same space.
Yeah, and I know that's one of the areas you work in, you know, and you've mentioned some of this, the types of work you do, but in a little bit of a broader scale or scope, can you give our listeners a little more detail, you know, beyond M&A? I mean, there's so much in the CPA world, and how I encounter it from my side is more, I think in the experience that if I can use somebody else's words, is that most CPAs tend to be high-priced tax preparers. But that is a world of difference.
That
night and day from what it is, the work that you do.
So the CPA profession from a traditional standpoint is very backwards looking. So we're oftentimes we're called the writers of the history book. Mm-hmm. And throughout my career in the profession, I always had a vision of being more forward looking with our clients, that telling someone what happened a month ago or 2 months ago isn't providing that business owner with a whole lot of actionable advice. So the whole profile of our organization is to be forward-looking in an advisory capacity. So we do all of the things that you would expect a CPA firm to traditionally do. Taxes are obviously a big issue in any type of a business transaction. So we do spend a lot of time in that area, but a differentiation would be preparing tax returns is an afterthought with our clients. The differentiation in our service plan is to be forward-looking and do tax planning so that there's no surprises. That type of an approach or a vision carries over to the other services that we offer our clients as well.
So if I were to use a word that I'm familiar with, and maybe a lot of the listeners, would you say you're proactive rather than reactive?
That would be a good description. Yeah. That, again, giving the business owner the opportunity, an analogy I often use is looking through the windshield rather than looking at your rear view mirror.
Oh, what a great analogy. I like that. I like that a lot. So what are the biggest customers or the biggest challenges that your customers face? And what solutions, without, you don't want to get too deep in the weeds here and, put everybody to sleep, because I know accounting is one of the things I know it's necessary for me, but I don't like it. And that's different than what you do. But in terms of the solutions or the services that you're bringing to your ideal customer.
So our client base is far and beyond business owners. So that is the nature of our organization, is dealing with business owners. And what I have found through my entire career, and I actually started working for a CPA firm when I was a senior in high school. So it is literally all I have known in my professional.
Just a few years ago.
Yeah, about 6, 7 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
But you just stopped counting, right?
Right. So as I've always had just a fascination with how small businesses operate, how all of the factors that come together to make a business successful fall into place. And that's just always fascinated me. I've had opportunities throughout my career to work for larger organizations, and I've stuck with small, medium-sized businesses. And as I have been involved with thousands of these types of owners, we've observed the types of issues they face. And from narrowing that discussion down, to your point, on the finance side, what we found was that the majority of small business owners get into business not because they have some grand plan and they have mapped out, hey, how is this going to look for the next 2, 5, 10 years? It doesn't happen that way. Typically, someone goes into business and they have some type of a technical skill, and they say, hey, I can do it better than the person I'm working for, or some variation of that theme. And so they're not approaching their business operation from a strategic standpoint. And I fell into that same category. When I got into business, when I opened up my own practice 33 years ago, there was no grand plan. The initial plan was put food on the table. And we find that with many, many business owners. So the role that we play there is to help them be strategic about their operation and use finance as a way to report on those strategic matters.
And I know we do a very similar type of service in a number of aspects, but it's measuring. I say stop guessing and start measuring, right? I think was a phrase I heard some time ago. And it's about metrics. And what I love about math, and I'm sure you do too, is that's quantifiable.
For the most part, that doesn't lie. But the kind of a variation on that theme that I've heard is, what gets measured gets managed.
There you go. I like that one.
My experience has been that is the case. And so the bridge that we gap is when we work with our business owners, for example, working with you, we don't profess to be experts in your profession or your industry.
I remember you saying that.
But what we do is provide a bridge between the operational side, where you are the expert, and the story that the finance, the story that tells. I mean, the finance, if finance is reported and measured correctly, that's telling a story. And that's the gap that we bridge, the marrying the operational side with the finance side, and pushing the business owners to think strategically and not, you being a business owner, me being a business owner, we live that, we have lived that and live that every day, where the details, the day-to-day details can absorb a business owner, and it seems like there's never time to even think about tomorrow morning, more or less 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now.
Absolutely.
And that's the discipline that we try to bring to the table.
I see that a lot on the Redde-Zone business consulting side, where we're working with business owners. And I guess the phraseology I would use to describe that is we're so busy working in our business that we can't stop to work on our business, right? And to borrow from Stephen Covey, I'm so busy cutting this tree down, I don't have time to sharpen the saw. Guy taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, did you sharpen the saw? Can't you see I'm busy cutting this tree down?
Right, right.
So at the end of the day, it's great to have providers like you where you can come in a second set of eyes, a professional whose focus, as I see it, tell me if I'm wrong, top line revenue, bottom line profit. The two key numbers, and then everything in between that's going to drive, those metrics.
And it's a great point that you make. The other observation that we've made is the numbers can be so overwhelming to a small business owner who doesn't have a finance background.
Right.
And
because they're busy being the technician.
That's it.
Got to make the donuts, right?
That's it. And so the value that we attempt to bring to the table is not to give Rick a 10-page book of all kind of numbers. It's to your point, in every business that I've worked with, you can narrow down the measure of success to 2 or 3 key things. If you get those 2 or 3 key things close to correct, everything else will fall into place. The problem is many business owners are worrying about the things that don't matter. That whether
majoring in minors.
That's a great analogy. So the discipline that we attempt to bring to the mix is to help that business owner identify those metrics that truly are going to drive them to achieve their goals, and then continually report on that and force them to keep focused on that. I used to have a little Post-it note attached to my computer screen. I borrowed this from somebody else. It's not original, but it really was impactful on me. And it said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And that was just a very interesting way of focus, right? Yeah. It's all talking about focus. Right. And so when we're dealing with our business owner clients, it's sticking on the main thing.
Yeah, because those are the things that move the needle, right? So I know we've talked about a breadth, a wide, it's primarily business owners, but you work with individuals too. What does your ideal customer look like? And I guess I'll ask you 2 questions in one. It's a bonus round. Where do your new clients typically come from?
Well, taking that maybe a little broader of how I'll talk about us, but talk about how we approach this topic with our clients as well. And one key aspect for any business, so one of the main things that would apply to any business that, again, I had to learn the hard way, and you and I have talked about this with our own businesses, is identifying who that ideal customer is. And that may sound so basic, but the vast majority of businesses, particularly in their early stage, anyone with a pulse is a client. Yes. It has a prospect. And again, having been in that situation of starting with essentially nothing, the survival can make you make some certain decisions. But the quicker that that business can identify what is it that we are good at, what do we enjoy doing, where can we add value, and identify that customer and stick to it, is just a key factor of success. Now, again, it took me way too long to figure that out.
I'm in that club.
But
I kind of picture it too. We were talking about golf, and I try to golf. So, but I do know, but I guess it's in any sport. In baseball, there's a sweet spot on the bat. In a golf club, there's a sweet spot on the club. Tennis, pickleball, I'm playing like crazy. You know, there's a sweet spot on that paddle, and you can tell when you hit it because it's crisp. And really, when you look at a business model, yeah, it's a little broader. Initially, like you said, I've heard in certain industries, if they could fog a mirror, right?
yes, sir.
We're willing to work with. They got a pulse, and then it starts to get refined because you tend to think, hey, I'm spending 80% of my time, you know, on the people who aren't feeding me now. And then we go through a process, maybe a maturation process where we're just getting started and we get a little more refined. We go, hey, these are the people, if I could repeat them every day, would make me want to get out of bed, jump out of bed, and run to the office. I'm not drive, but get into the office, get in the driver's seat and start helping people.
I could not agree more. And getting that focus it's really what's best for the customer or your clients as well.
Absolutely.
If you've got people that you don't really enjoy working with, you're not going to do your best work for them. That's just human nature. As hard as we'd like to try, it's just not going to work out that way. So back to your question about what does that look like for our organization.
Absolutely.
And again, I'll use this as a kind of a process that others could use as well. Again, we've gone through the heavy lifting and done it the hard way. So maybe we can help some people do it a little easier. So as I mentioned earlier, I've spent my entire career working with small, medium-sized businesses, and my lovely spouse might disagree with this ever so slightly, but I do try to be a good listener. So as I have gone through those years, always listening for where are the pain points for the business owner, and identifying our service offerings to reflect not what we think is important, but to as a response to those pain points. So the typical service plan for our clients is going to reflect where we continually hear, this is what's keeping me awake at night. This is what's causing me to have to take blood pressure medication. This is what's causing me to have a bad relationship with my family. So within that space, our clients are, and part of it reflects where my passion was. So again, I said in choosing your ideal customer, it's who do you enjoy working with? And if I don't enjoy working with those people, they may have all kind of needs, but if I don't enjoy working in that area, not going to work.
Preaching to the choir.
Yep. So it's businesses somewhere between maybe $5 to $50 million in revenue who have a solid enterprise, but they just, again, don't have that in-house financial expertise, and they don't have it themselves. So we are a companion to their team, a supplement to their team, to bring that level of experience in finance when they maybe don't have the need to have that role full time. We can fill that role on an as-needed basis.
I think that's part of why we fit together well, and we're still realizing, that aspect of our relationship, where that you work well with companies is a fractional provider.
That's
right.
That's it.
And I think that's what's maybe unknown to a lot of business owners out there. You don't have to afford a CFO, right? Because you guys can kind of play that role because you have the awareness, and they're paying as needed, so to speak, to fill those needs. I know in Redde-Zone Business Consulting, our primary focus on businesses that want to grow versus the ones that are ready to exit. The ones that want to grow, we have a program called the Max 4 program, where we focus on We're focusing on their profitability. Is it the best it can be? Now that's kind of where you come in. You can analyze those numbers. That's where we fit
Right.
together.
Yes.
Then it's about operations, and you and I both run EOS.
Right.
And that didn't surprise me. When we sat down together and we had a lot of the same sense of being and how we were organizing and running things. Then it's sales and it's continuity strategies, because companies that have maxed out those four are more valuable companies. They're ready to sell. They're built to sell.
And to the point that I know you and I have talked about, and I mentioned earlier, is every business is going to transition. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It will happen. Just will it happen in an organized fashion that meets the goals of the owners, or will it just fade away into nothing?
Which is a tragedy.
Yeah.
We look at, you and I see this. We see business owners that have poured their whole lives. This is like a member of their family, which is so important. I've heard this. Women become part of the business. For men, it becomes part of us. So it's like, when I'm going to leave an arm behind.
Yes.
I think for the women, and I'm just speaking broadly here, don't take offense at anything, that, for them, it's like leaving a child behind, maybe.
Right.
And it's just, that's part of them too. But at the end of the day, these are things you either prepare for it, and to use an old saying, you either plan so you don't fail, but most of those crash because they fail to plan. They don't have a strategy. And the best run companies, John, don't they have those ducks in a row? They have a written battle box for their continuity plan. They know what the value of their company is. If you're getting into what we call the red zone, you better know the value of your company.
For sure.
Now, I'm not going back of the napkin, let's have a drink and talk about, no, this is what I think my industry's worth. No, these are metrics based down under the hood of what your company looks like, how well your company's run. And I'll be honest, I'll be a little transparent here. My company, I would say, was good for a number of years. And a lot of companies out there are good. I didn't become great until the last 3 years, because there's standard operating procedures. There's processes, there's feedback, there's weekly meetings where things are talked about, plans, there's a leadership team, and then there's people one person's accountable. You know the language I'm speaking.
I do.
Because if there's multiple owners, there's no owners. Having the right people in the right seats doing the right jobs. How critical is that to culture?
Well, the transition and succession conundrum, I'll call it, is an interesting one. Again, for the third time now, every business will transition, but I think this has been your experience as well. It certainly has been mine, that it is really challenging to get business owners to even think about this matter, more or less take solid action. So the role that Redde-Zone plays, which is a absolute critical one, is to get, at a minimum, get business owners thinking about this inevitable activity. I mean, I make, you mentioned about the, leaving an arm when you leave. And I will say, we do have some female business owners who are heavily invested in their businesses. I'm sure you do. So
this seems to be the general trend.
And so getting this topic to be even on the table is a challenge. And that has been, if there's one matter that business owners get in their way, is that this is such a part of me, I can't even bear to think about it not being, part of my existence. As you said, the business and the owner almost become inseparable. And for a successful small business, that level of psychological and mental investment, not to mention the the risk and that stress really puts the business owners into kind of a party of their own, and the entrepreneurs have to have the successful ones have very similar personality traits, and having those traits is essential to success. What would be an example? One example would be optimism. I mean, I hear other people making non-business owners kind of poking the business owners. Oh, you're the how eternal optimist. You know what? If business owners didn't have that eternal optimism, you'd pull the sheets over your head and you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, because there's always something ready to knock you down. And having that mindset of, even if I get knocked down, you know what? I'll get up and smile and do it all over again, and be happy about it. But those behavioral aspects are also a hindrance to the embracing the transition. So I'm curious how you have found the strategies you've seen to get business owners engaged in the process.
Absolutely. So that is at the very core of our two programs. And Redde-Zone oversees, essentially I see our role as a coach. And really, for every business owner, the question is this: do you want to grow or do you want to exit? Now, if you don't want to grow, I'm okay with that too, because I know that we can help you. But they're going to want to do both of those. Now, the interesting thing, as well as I, the process is the same. It's just the time we've got to work with it. So if it's 2 years or less, that's what Best of Biz Solutions is about. It'll get you out the door. There's a minimal amount of items that we can do, but we're going to get this ready for sale and ready for market. We're going to bring in a team and do all the work. With the people who want to grow, we're going to do the Max 4 program. We're going to maximize profitability. We're going to look at those numbers. We're going to maximize operations and be the best you can be and have accountability. So there are systems in place that run when you're not there. And you got to set these up well ahead. The biggest response that I don't know if you've heard this, I say, do you want to exit? Oh yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that in 5 years from now. And they think they're going to sell their business, slap some paint on it, some new carpet, new granite, like a house. And then they're just going to sell their business, and they just have no idea. There's so many more aspects that a buyer is going to look at. A buyer is going to scrutinize your business like nobody has ever done before, right? You know what I'm talking about. So why don't we just go ahead and start this and put this in place, which leads me to our next question. We call it the battle box in my side. Part of that is having to keep people into key places who know exactly what they're going to do. John, great organizations, and then that's what we're wanting to do. We're both doing this. We want to take companies from good to great. If they're too dysfunctional and disorganized, I've got other people I can refer you to that can help counsel and coach you through that to get you to a place of good. But you have to have a certain amount of that, right? Because otherwise I can give you gold.
Right.
And you go, what's this? Looks like another metal, a paperweight.
Right.
Out the back door. So who are your top key people in your organization, and how did you choose them?
Right. Well, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, we went through a period, an enviable position for sure, where for 5 years in a row we had 20% year over year growth for 5 years.
Wow.
Now, that's a lot of growth to absorb in a smaller organization, and we have about 50 people in our organization. So we were getting to the point of approaching things being out of control. Not quite there yet. So we made the decision that if we were going to get to that next level of growth, we needed a different way, a different mindset. We couldn't keep operating as we operated when we had 5 people. That was not a scalable situation.
Well, I've got 5 people, and I understand the challenge of 5.
Yeah.
50 would keep me up at night.
So as you and I we discussed a minute ago, we looked for some outside help and settled on something. And there's a variety of programs out there, and there's good ones, but there's one in particular that we decided on that's called the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Absolutely.
And
love it.
Again, whether it's that system or another one, the idea was bring some other people into leadership that's outside the ownership group.
Kind of a mentorship.
That's correct. So that was we had key people in key roles, but we were not utilizing them to help lead and manage the organization. They were managing tasks, but not managing the organization. So that was one significant item. And that's our leadership team. We meet once a week religiously for 90 minutes every week. We have a set agenda. Sometimes we're more effective than others. We're still human beings and have tendency to get off track. But the discipline of this system helps keep us mainly on track. So the key people are in that leadership group. That would be a chief operating officer. We elevated one of our people who was in the client service area, and knew that we felt very confident that she would have the capability to really be a leader in the organization beyond that. And we have a new role that we had for the organization of chief operating officer. I never thought, when we started out with a firm of 1 that we would wind up with a COO, but that happened. And we have a director of our people. We're a people business. The assets of the firm are minimal aside from our skilled people. And we have just another long-term person. Interestingly enough, everyone on the leadership team, except myself and my co-owner, are all females. And they have done a fabulous job. But we have another element of the EOS that you're familiar with, and you referred to it before, is the accountability chart. And it's a twist on an organizational chart. And it's a process that you go through to not just give people a block on a grid, but you identify these are the matters that you have complete ownership of.
Yeah.
So that every single person in our organization, and that's why I certainly can't limit it to key people, every person in the organization has a spot on that accountability chart, and that is published so everybody can see what everybody's accountability is.
Of course, you guys have the same thing. You have a weekly level 10.
We do.
And everybody's giving reports on track or off track. And you're tracking things, as they say, in the world of 90. So take your annual goals, break them to 90-day goals, sprints, break them to weekly, break them down to daily. And every week somebody's got to come in and go, yeah, hey, John, or not even to John, they're counting to the whole team and saying, yeah, I'm off track. Then it goes into our favorite section, right? IDS, that
Yes.
Identify, Discuss, and Solve. Yeah. And if it doesn't, then there's more discussion and it figures out, hey, here's a problem. We're not pointing you out. Let's collectively solve that problem together. And you know what I love that you said, and I heard it said this way: we lead people, we manage things. And that system has lead, manage, and accountability.
Yes.
And it's the only way that stuff gets done.
Yeah. So that was a long way of identifying who our key people is. And I know it sounds so trite, but
so critical.
The nature of our organization is such that every person plays a key role, a foundational aspect of the founding of our organization was we were not going to be siloed. It went against the traditional format of how professional services firms are organized, and it was intentional, and it was to take away from, hey, Rick, you have your work or your clients. This is my work and my clients.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested in your
Your
problems.
firm has clients.
That's
We all work for the firm.
I had
We work for the client.
another CPA who was a mentor to me, who had a great saying. He said, if one person is busy, the entire firm is busy. And that's the nature of the unsiloed. So because of that, culture, it is, it makes every single person a key person in the organization. And, it's just, if there's a joy that I get, it's, well, at this point in my career, it's developing other people is really where I get my joy.
So cool. I think that leads right into our next question. What do you see? And you and I have talked about this over happy hours and different things. What's your timeline look like for transitioning out of what you're doing? Because I know you're like me. We love what we do.
Right.
And we love who we do it for. And secondly, what's the biggest challenge you see to accomplishing that transition?
It's a great question. So I've already begun my transition in terms of the leadership and the management of the organization. There are most things that happen I find out about after the fact, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly that was
one of the litmus tests, isn't it?
It is, and it was the intentional work over the last 7 or 8 years of working myself out of that role, not out of a role, but out of that role, where perfectly capable people. And I found myself guilty of this as well. And it certainly is another one of those behavioral aspects of business owners where you can you can trick yourself into thinking you're irreplaceable. And nobody is irreplaceable. And I tell clients that all the time, that the flip side of that is, if you don't get out of the way and quit being a shadow over other people, they're never going to develop.
They got to shine.
Because we learn the hard way, right? We learn what we know. The biggest learning moments were when we made mistakes.
Right.
And we beat ourselves up over, how could I have done something that ridiculous? And I've got a big, thick book of the number of times that happened. But back to the optimistic part, right?
I think my book like that's probably 10 times the size of this one.
Yeah. But to get to and so as part of this transition process, and again, one that I have followed myself, and it's hard, but to let your good people, give them the chance to spread their wings without you being a shadow over them.
Yeah.
They'll never develop otherwise. And so my time frame, I feel one of the most fortunate people on the planet for a lot of reasons. Number one being I have a beautiful wife and great kids and good friends are the things that are most important to me.
Yeah.
But from a business perspective, I got to make a pretty decent living doing something that I just love doing. And so because of that,
I hear that.
For me, I plan on continuing to be involved in the business, but in a different way, in a visionary way, to recognize trends in our profession, but also to work with clients now in a different way, to be more involved in their activities. So that's what my future looks like.
Yeah. And so really, I think we talked about this, the way that our companies function as we step away is the standard operating procedures in the system that holds accountability. We put those in place, then we test them and we step away and come back and we check them, and it's constant process. I know that we had an open house this week. We had some changes for some of our clients, and clients, they'll say, "Well, is Rick still around? And if he is, I'd like to say hi." Now that's the exact thing I want to hear. And I envisioned this, years ago. And now that's coming to fruition. And I say, hey, I'm still here. I'm just doing something. I'm playing a different role here. It's much more strategic, managing general partner of Rick Saylor Financial. But my new day job is helping business owners because, like you said, the tragedy is those that aren't planning, there's an 80% fail rate. It's a death rate.
Yes.
Right? There's a mortality that 8 out of 10 businesses are going to just die. When you think somebody has spent their whole life, and you and I have engaged different businesses, and we know there's lifestyle businesses. That's a job, right? There's no intrinsic value. There's not recurring revenue. There's an asset value, which is 90% of all sales. But these other businesses like yours and mine, where there's recurring revenue aspect to them, there's multiples that apply to that. And there's a vast amount of improvement really in any business, and we're doing that. We've done that. We're experiencing. So we eat our own cooking, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, I think about, there's 3 parts in the discipline of what I focus on with business owners. One, certainly we're talking about, is the business itself. The second is financial. That's critical as well. Are they going to get to their ideal self in lives through financial fulfillment? Well, that's up to me as a planner to kind of lay that out and show them. I need somebody like you to do that work. I can do part of it, the wealth management, but that's not all of it. It's the business too. The third one, which probably holds an unfair amount of the balance that most don't account for, is the personal. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when you don't do this every day? Because you start counting up in a week and you go, there's 40 hours in a week. They say, well, I'm going to golf more. Okay, so how many times a week? It takes 4 hours to golf. Let's say 5. And you golf 3 times a week. Well, that's 15 hours. Okay, you got 25 more to go. Well, I'm going to go to some happy hours. Okay, so that's let's say that's 8 more hours and dinner, right? Now you're all the way up to 23. You're just a little over halfway there. And these are the things that people haven't thought about. So I'm going to ask you that question. If you can picture this, you get to that point and you say, this isn't fun anymore. I don't want anything to do with this. What does John Kirsch do?
Right.
What do you do all day?
Right. Well, it's a great question, and it is one I would agree that particularly business owners like you and me that are so absorbed in our business, it's hard to imagine life without that. So it's definitely a critical aspect to planning a successful transition. So what would that look like for John? Well, fortunately or unfortunately, my children are spread out throughout the country. I have four children, and they are in all different spots in the country. So we've actually started this. So just spending more time with our children and visiting them. And fortunately, they're all in places that are fun to visit. So
well, how about grandkids? You have grandkids?
None yet.
Okay, so let me just clue you, because I've got 4, and I can tell you they're more fun than the kids. In fact, I've heard somebody else. I wish I could take credit, but I can't. If I'd have known that the grandkids were going to be so much fun, I'd have skipped the kids. Hey, John, I want to thank you for being on the show. What a great show. I appreciate
It's been a great conversation. I hope we provided some value to your listeners, and it's just been fabulous to have this discussion with you.
Yes. So a lot of these things that we've talked about, you can find, I've addressed these in a series called Redde-Zone Tips. And I think there's a number of those on the website you can access. And we'd love to hear your company story on Redde-Zone Radio. You can visit our website And if you look down on the screen, it's right here, Redde-Zone.com. That's REDDE-zone. Email, and here's our phone number. And if you've benefited from today's interview, be sure and give us a thumbs up and share it with your colleagues and friends. To obtain your free copy of Exit Smart, where 10 industry leaders share their built-to-sell insights that you can use right away, just click on the book, complete your information, we'll get it right out to you. Oh, yeah, and let us know if you'd like an autographed copy. We'd be honored to send that to you. You can also receive a free subscription to our e-newsletter, Redde-Zone Insights, just by requesting it. Well, that's this week's interview. See you soon.